this key over here. And then I believe if I push this button, our ugly mugs will come up. I'm going to have to get you to check the Twitch channel, make sure everything's going through. Hopefully it is. If it isn't, we'll get her remedied. We'll get her fixed up. Welcome to the Murder Hobo RPG Show, a proud member of the Tabletop RPG Network. This is episode 24, recorded September 16th, 2020. I'm one of your hosts, Gary, a.k.a. the Murder Hobo, and I'm here with none other than this fella, Uncle J-Ras, a.k.a. Captain Colin. What's going on, my bowel brother?
Oh, you know what's happening there, my colon compadre.
My colon compadre. It's funny.
My colon comrade, actually, yeah, my colon comrade, because that means like brother in arm.
You know, I didn't think you'd have a comeback for that, but you're on your toes tonight, I see, huh?
I do okay. I've drank a little Coke Zero, got a little, got a little happy juice in me. I'm all right, man.
You got some caffeine working it.
I shouldn't be drinking caffeine because as soon as this is over, man, I'm going to try to crash, but. I just figured I'd be a little more peppy here for the show.
Mm-hmm. Well,
instead of
as long as you're all peppy and no Le Pew, we're good.
Yeah, all right, yeah, that's what I'm here for, man. To try to like boost the energy level of the show.
Well,
I don't know if I do or don't.
You bring some style and class to an otherwise, reprehensible show.
More like I bring violent ass. Ooh. Boy, the kid is quick tonight.
Wow. I'm going to have to reel you in, Jay.
Yeah, maybe no more Coke Zero. So this is So go to the next part there, Gary.
Okay, let's do this. This is a podcast about role-playing games in general, and as usual, we're going to ramble incoherently like we just did in an attempt to sound like we know what we're talking about, and hope you don't call us on our bullshit.
That's right. And today we're going to talk about something that us middle-aged folks start thinking about as we start approaching the autumn of our years here, and that's a nostalgia. Like, what was it like playing back in the days, and was it really that good and everything? So that's a topic we were talking about the other day, or we were about to get into, and I just figured, why don't we bring this to the airwaves here, or the podcast waves, and bring it to the show.
Mm-hmm. It'll give us something to talk about. Let's see if we can't bullshit our way through this episode over the course of the next hour, talking about weird and old crazy things that we used to do.
Yep. Sounds good to me.
Fantastic. So what have you been up to? What's going on? What's been happening around the old gaming table?
Well, you tell me, my man. I actually, in fact, here today, Gary, you have to admit to the world and everybody else that what did I do this past Sunday? What did I do?
I don't know. Might have been some age. Might have been some age action on Sunday that finally
That's
happened.
Right. Finally happened. Yeah, actually, I got what it is. I finally got it configured in Fantasy Grounds the way that I wanted, and I was like, well, let me go ahead and test this little modern age, the little quick start for you. And I ran that. And how'd you dig that? Was that okay?
There is something to be said about the age system. You know what I mean? Like, you want to take your sort of. What I like about it is that it's familiar enough with the standard D20 rollers, but has the added cool feature of things like stunts. You know what I mean? It's like the rules are pretty straightforward. There's not much to learn. You're rolling 2d6, you're beating a target number, but you actually roll 3d6, and then you got to beat a target number. But the cool part is you match up some of those two of those die, and you get what's called stunt points. And that's where the cool stuff happens, man. You can start doing extra things like move more, help another compadre out, smash somebody for extra damage, take another complete attack if you wanted to spend your points on like fast moves and stuff. That adds an element to the game that I like, not only both for the story but as well as for the. Man, I just forgot my train of thought there. I think I need to have some Coke Zero. Not only does it add a cool element for the story, but it's a fun mechanic to play with strategically. So when you have like your deal, your guys set up and whatnot, it's like, okay, I could go quickly, but I could also, maybe boost somebody else to go a little bit faster with a stunt die or something like that, and then they get a buff off, or man, it's just so many opportunities and options that, it was good. It was fun. I really enjoyed it. I like Age. The adventure gaming engine is fun. It's good stuff.
Yep. It is. It sort of scratches a lot of itches where I think where a lot of things where D20 kind of like leaves me cold this kind of like picks up a lot of the slack. I mean, because you do roll for initiative and there are hit points in some senses, the way you want to play it. So there are that elements. But yeah, I think what it does, it's a good system to teach people how to play RPGs, because once you're presented with these stunts, they're kind of like role playing, cues or, whatever. It's like, oh, you can do this. You have the opportunity to do this now. I'm like, okay. And it gets people pumped up for rolling stunts, sort of like when people ace and, get exploding dice in Savage Worlds, right? Everybody gets excited when you roll these doubles, like, ooh, what can you do now? And that applies outside of combat as well. So I dig the system outside of this and Savage Worlds. I think are my two big jams right now. Just kind of like you have ICRPG and Savage Worlds. This is my other one.
I wasn't really listening to what you just said, to be honest. I mean, I was
You never do. So I can say that Gary's a whore beaver, and you'd be like, yeah, man, I wasn't listening.
I can hear you.
I know. Yeah.
And I was listening to you talk, but I don't know if you said this thing in particular that I wanted to bring up. One of the things that you mentioned about the age system that appealed to you on Sunday when we were playing is that it becomes a lot more than I swing my sword. And players are now forced to be like, okay, I swing my sword. They swing their sword, and it's like, oh, but I also do this. You know what I mean? I'm going to go do this and this kind of a thing. So it adds to that flavor from a player's perspective that gives them a little bit more, not really narrative control of the story, but it's not so much I swing and I miss. It's like I swing and I miss, and I trip this guy who's attacking this person to allow them to move up in the initiative order, kind of a thing. And yeah, I thought I just think that's pretty slick.
It is. It teaches you how to kind of like role play, or gives you those elements, man. So yeah, that's exactly what I was getting at. And that's pretty cool, man. It's a good one to kind of pick up and go with. Everybody didn't have any problems with it either, man. So yeah, it's a good one to get into.
So normally I'm 100% focused on what you're saying to me almost at all times, because you really are like, you're the spicy flavor of the show, so to speak. The reason that I wasn't paying attention is because there was a thing that I wanted to talk about. If you're watching this tonight, I'm going to tell you a funny story. So, Jay, check out the Twitch stream. This will pop up for you in a second. I'm going to shoot over to. Let's go. Hopefully, this will pop in here, and it'll show up. There we go. So you can see my sweet ass TTS table, right? This is a cool little thing called the grid table. I'm going to bust over to the black, and you can now see that all of the stuff is here, right? But what this table does is it allows you to put up and down these little columns. Unfortunately, it doesn't make the table disappear with these little cupboards that pop in and out. I believe that was blue, right? But you see the little trays that pop out and stuff like that. So this table comes in a size, and that size is not compatible with this little mod here that I use called One World that allows me to bring up my scenes and stuff. So I resized this table so that it would work with One World, so that you can see when I smash my button. So we'll just show you a little demonstration. So you can see that this would be the scene, would be this here. And oh man, this is going to suck for the podcasters because they're not going to see it. But anyways, I'll just probably end up editing this little piece out. But you see how it fits nicely in there? Right? Yep. So I resized the table so that it would fit to the image screen size, which is about 1600 by 945. You can see that it says right there. The funny part is when you go to pack the table up, it literally packs the table up.
It takes everything. Jeez.
Right? Oh, and I didn't realize that. Somebody actually had to pop in and tell me that it packs the entire table up. And I just wanted to say that I think the fix might be to technically adjust the size of the table from top down. But that was a funny thing that had come up this week. So I wanted to show you in person how that actually works. The stupid table, which is very cool, actually packs up. Not only did I have trouble with that, but you can see when you change colors, you can do, like if I was to go to yellow, right? Yellow really hides. This is a hidden area underneath this little deal. You can create hidden zones and stuff like that. But the problem with this is, for some reason, this table interacts like an object, And so the problem is if you drop this hidden zone down on just a little bit, it makes the entire table hidden. So I've had nothing but troubles with this table. So if you're using the grid table and you're watching this, don't use the grid table. I'm going to shut this off now. We'll go back to what we were doing. I just thought you might get a kick out of that. So
I did. That was pretty damn funny. He's like, okay, whee, it's gone.
Packs the whole frickin' stupid table up. So anyways, don't use the grid table. I'm doing the show tonight. I still haven't had a chance to get around and fix it. This is two late nights in a row. And the reason I was thinking about that is because this week we did Modern Age on Sunday. My Sunday game that I play with Dave the Digital Dungeon Master was a no-go. We talked about some stuff, and I'm going to run Last Flight of the Red Sword Sunday at 1 p.m. So if you're kicking around Sunday afternoon and you want to pop in and check out what's going on, you can see that will be running on the Twitch stream. You can watch me play Last Flight of the Red Sword in 3D. Now, Jay, you've already played this, and
yes.
There was one really cool moment that you had where we cast a spell that made you rather large.
Yes. And I think I rolled like pretty well on the actual roll, and so I ended up like getting to grow like 5 times my size, and so that added like a +5 to my strength. And I was just smacking people around, just like patow, like backhanding people, like clear across the room and stuff. It was awesome, like just being a giant. That's like anytime I get a chance to like get the growth power, I'm gonna take it, man. Because I mean, who doesn't want to just be like a giant every once in a while, just smack people around?
Yeah,
at least I do anyway. But then again, you're already like halfway there.
Yeah, it's sweet. Yeah,
personally, you're a giant. You're just like a
man. I gotta ungiant myself. My knees are starting to friggin' pack it in. But anyways, we're not here to talk old person problems. I don't know what's gonna go first, sure? My knees or my bowels, one of the two. So yeah, I've got the Flight of the Last Flight of the Red Sword. I keep screwing the name up. That's going to be happening Sunday. You can watch me play on Tabletop Simulator 3D style. And I do have my Sunday morning games. That's going to be happening this week. We're going to do the conclusion of Tales Trees Tell, where the party has gone into the forest and they're going to have to deal with some hags. We'll see how that pans out. And then other than that, what have you got going on this weekend? You taking the week off?
Well, actually, man, like I have to. I'm not going to be doing any gaming like up until not on the weekend until up until next month, man. When I get back from we'll see. I have to do some work stuff this weekend. I have to do some work stuff next weekend, and then I could probably pop in for a game that weekend after. But then I'm going on my honeymoon and everything, so I'm just going to be tied up for these next few weekends. So I ain't running anything, and I don't know if I'm even participating in anything. So unless we might get a Rippers game going in between though, and that's with my sister, my nephew, and my wife.
Ooh, nice. That'll be sweet.
Rippers fun, man. I love it.
I got hunting on Thanksgiving in Canada's coming up. So we're doing that, I believe, on the 12th or something like that. 10th, 11th, 12th that weekend. The weekend after that, I think, is like the I don't know. I got to look it up on my calendar, so we're gonna bust this off because I just keep forgetting to ask you in chat. So Sunday, October 11th, is Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
the 12th, I'll be gone. I won't. I'll be in Yellowstone.
Okay.
Yellowstone National Park, man. During on my honeymoon, doing cool stuff.
That's gonna be awesome.
Seeing bison and bears screw, so that'll be awesome.
Well, I'm gonna go try and find some bears and some moose screwing, and then I'm gonna put a hole in them.
Are you?
Yeah, I'm going hunting that week.
And then you eat around that hole.
You've got the after down for the 18th of October. Yep. Can you switch that to the 25th so that I can do the 18th?
Did you say I'm actually going to be out of town the 25th? So
what? Okay.
Yeah, my schedule's all screwed. So maybe we need to move all that. Eric's going to be pissed. He's going to be like, we're never going to get to play this. And like, we'll figure it out, man. We're not going anywhere.
Right. Sooner or later, it's going to happen. I'm excited for the after. That's going to be sweet.
Yeah. and I gotta run it too. Like the expectation is going to be high, but I definitely want to run it. Especially we gotta get Eric a chance to get him to play Goaty Lee, and I don't want to disappoint the little fella. He's fragile. He
Yeah.
needs a lot of help in life.
Right.
I try to boost him up.
No sleeves, Goaty Lee.
Yep. Exactly. Well, he's actually said he's going to be hoodie Lee. Now that summer's over with, so yeah, he's going to be wearing 4 sleeves now.
Have you got a sweet ass French impersonation of Eric?
As a goat, though, I do. This is pretty much how I was going to be playing him. We, really. That's how I imagine it.
Oh my god! Did you just did a goat noise and said "we" at the end like a Frenchman?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's the best. Oh my god! All right.
I have my moments. Let me ask you this though before we move on. So you guys have Canadian Thanksgiving, right? You have it on the 11th, October 11th, right?
Something like that. Yep, it's one of them days.
So, what do you guys do? I mean, do you guys eat like turkey or something, or eat back bacon, or what do you guys eat for or do on Canadian Thanksgiving?
It's no different than what you do. We have turkey and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and the dressing and whatnot. I don't know. I just want turkey and the dressing and all the other happy fun stuff.
You know what we're doing after that, man? Turkey poutine, buddy. Turkey poutine.
That's what I was wondering if when the turkey poutine was coming out.
Turkey stuffing. Yeah, there's just maple syrup on everything. Damn straight there is.
Well, it's funny. Like down here in the South, it's gravy on everything. So it works out.
Right, man. You guys got some weird gravies in America. It's like I don't know what's going on down there half the time.
It's really weird, especially you come to the South, which is a far different animal than the rest of the country. Because we had that Southern country gravy, which is milk based and not meat based. Oh, it's so weird, man. And they throw sausage in it. It's something. It's a little weird, man.
That's
but
like
people love it.
Punch in the intestines, isn't it?
Yeah, man. It'll do a number on you if you're not used to it. You're essentially eating floured gravy drippings, and you're going to put that on a biscuit, which is already just you're sitting there eating buttered baked in bread. So boom, boom, boom. There goes
Man, all this,
here comes the diabetes.
This food talk's making me salivate a little bit here. I gotta say.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah, I usually eat before I come on the show, so I don't usually get too hungry about talking.
Speaking of nostalgia, that's like food nostalgia. Back in the days when my bowels could take a beating. Right?
Right.
Okay.
All right.
Let's put a pin in this bitch. Move over to section 2. We're going to talk about nostalgia in RPGs, the good old days. And then I see you got some question marks in here. Because really, it's like, there's some things, like nostalgia's ass, dude. I'm gonna, the idea is cool, but in reality, right. I poop on nostalgia.
I can't, that's the thing too, man. I'm even trying to bring a counterpoint, and say some, try to make this a little more interesting. But yeah, there's some stuff, man. I have to agree with you, and I'm not just agreeing with you because you're your name's on the show. I'm agreeing with you because it's true, man. Some stuff in the past ain't so hot.
In the past, it's ass. Here we go.
Yeah.
Nostalgia. Man, are you excited for this? Because we're going to get a lot of hate from the OSR community, I think, to be honest with you. Yeah. Right? What is nostalgia, Jay?
Nostalgia, I actually looked this up I looked on the interwebs, and I actually got it defined here as nostalgia. And that's how it's pronounced, nostalgia. It's a noun, and it means a sentimental longing or wistful affection for the past, typically for a period or place with happy personal associations.
Wow.
And defined in a sentence is, thinking about my days when I was in college brings back a lot of nostalgia. So I didn't finish college, so I don't know if that's a true statement for me. So
I didn't start, so
there you go.
And now here's my question. I was just thinking about this. Like, how old do you actually have to be before you can get nostalgia? Because I mean, if you're one, really, like, what are you thinking? You know, you're two, like
Hmm.
5 years old. You're like, man, I remember when my mom let me suck on her boobs,
Right.
right?
Those were the days, man. But it wasn't real like great because you were, shitting all over, yourself. You know, maybe you do. I mean, maybe you're just human nature. You're just kind of like born with. You're always thinking that it's. I think it's sort of the thing. Like as you get older, you always just kind of like, think that something that occurred before is somehow better.
Well, that's
I
what
don't know if that.
that was kind of my point there. Because you know, when you're 5 years old, you're like, back in the good old days, I could just go get some milk straight from the source, kind of a deal. But
All
now
right.
that I'm like a 49-year-old man, every time I think about that, I'm like, ooh, man, I can't believe I did that. Right? Like, that's my mom. What the hell, man?
Right.
Eee.
Well, at least you got breastfed. My mom only liked me as a friend.
My mom didn't really breastfeed me. She just teased me. She just walked around in her bra all the time, and she's like, ninner, ninner, can't have this,
That's what my mom did too. You
man.
know. Thanks, mom.
If my mom tried to breastfeed me, I would like literally dry her up like a grape. I think I was, I think when I was 10, I was bigger than my mom. So you know what I mean? Like, I'm
Right.
I'm 3 years old, and it looks like a grown ass man is like suckling on his mother. Oh, this is the problem when you're big.
Yep.
I'm not
That's
even
what
going to get
happened.
into what happened with my aunt. My aunt breastfed till she was 10. Like, that kid was walking up and like undoing her bra and pulling it out at the dinner table, and we're all just like, man, he's got a mustache.
Get out of there, Jerry.
I was like, can I have some?
Right. We
Just
know
my.
you turned 11 today, but enough.
Oh
And
man. So I see you got some questions rolling in here, and lay them on me, Jay. Start with number one.
yeah, so I'm just going to talk to you about when you were a kid way back when, or what drove you to play in D&D? Like, what was the big catalyst, or like, was it the fact that was it a game? Because I mean, what were we really? Because you're like a year and a half older than I am, roughly. Because you're gonna be 49 here coming up, and I'm gonna be 48 next June. Um, so roughly so you're just a little bit older than I am. So what roughly drove you to check out D&D way back when?
Well,
Was it
so
just like a cool game that you heard about, or where'd you find it? Like in the back of a comic book or something? An ad for it?
man, I started playing in, I think I was 79. I was born in 71, and I've started playing when I was like 8 or in grade 3, so I would have been 8.
Mm-hmm.
My buddy Balfour came from Richmond. He moved into Langley where I lived.
Mm-hmm.
He came to my school and whatnot. But a month after he showed up at school, he drove by in his van for coming home from soccer practice, and me and my buddy Jay were like, hey, let's go check out this guy. So, because he just lived like 3 houses down from me. So we rolled in, started hanging out with him, and then just one day he broke out the old red box, the basic set with Keeping the Borderlands, and we started playing that. So nothing really drove me to check it out. Balfour just brought it out one day. I had no clue what was going on. We didn't have internets back in the day. Are you kidding?
Mm-mm.
You know what I mean? It's like, what is going on here? This is nowadays you can just look stuff up, right? So, anyways,
Yeah.
I didn't really look into it. He just kind of showed up. But what drove me to play it was the opportunities, like the realms that you could do and the things that you could do, the players, the characters. I think that the biggest thing for me is the gathering of stuff. Like, I love playing World of Warcraft. You start off at level 1, build your
Mm-hmm.
character up, get bigger, badder, better, and that premise comes from, I think, role playing games. We played a lot of basic, and although at the time I thought it was great because we are talking about nostalgia, looking back, man, those rules were janky. They were like, we probably spent more time arguing about the rules than we actually did playing the games, to be honest, because they just weren't well written or even well thought of. You know what I mean? It's just some crazy ass stuff.
I have to agree with you there because, in my sense, I didn't start off playing D&D, and I started off playing back a little later than you did. I've heard about D&D, but I lived in Texas from 1981 to 1986, and Texas being as far south as you can go. In some parts you can, they didn't take too kindly to that devil worship in D&D, if you know what I mean. So oh yeah, it was real bad, man. They used to have, like, they'd have they'd have book burnings and stuff too. I remember that. They were burning like throw the D&D books in the fire. Satan's fire. Remember that stuff. Church is
Yeah,
weird, but
we did.
anyway. Um. So we were allowed to when I was about 11 years old though. We didn't. I guess that's when, and maybe this is when we were aware of it, that these other RPG systems were coming out. It wasn't just Dungeons and Dragons, it wasn't, the Satan worship, but there was an Indiana Jones one that I remember. There was a Star Frontiers that I remember. I don't think I played any of that, but the big one that some kid down the neighborhood had was Marvel superheroes. And I grew up reading comic books. I was reading comic books before I went to school. I was like 3 years old reading freaking comic books. And so I was like, well, hell yeah, I get a chance to play in a game where I get to be a superhero. Yeah, we went and checked that out. But dude, we used to go play in the library because it was so hot in the summer times in Texas. We didn't want to go play outside. It just, it'd be 98 damn degrees. So we'd go to the library, me and like 2 other kids. And, or it was there was about 4 of us. And all it was we'd be in the kids' room, playing Marvel superheroes, rolling the dice and yelling at each other.
That's
No, you can't do that.
Hey, back in the day when you first started playing, did you have to crayon your dice color your dice numbers in? Do you remember that shit?
Yeah, and oh yeah, too. And the thing, see, we started playing. It was Marvel superheroes, and you play with the percentile dice. So we had 2d10, and the kid lost one of them, so we'd have to roll one twice. And and like there were so many fights over that, like. Because it was a percentile dice system, like how the first roll would be the 10s, and then the second one, wherever we worked it out, and it was dumb. And we just sit there and fight about that because kids would cheat. I'd see kids like flip their finger on it. I was like, no, that's it was a 4, now it's an 8.
I don't
Shit
think
like
we
that.
ever actually got into like fisticuffs and stuff like that when it came to playing these games, but
Mhm.
like the thing that I remember most about playing D&D way back is literally the arguments, like because poorly written, poorly thought out. And when you're playing from the game master's perspective too, a lot of the old school ideas, like the basic, I'm talking basic, not OSR, but a lot of the old school ideas were it was an adversarial game where the game master was playing against the players. Your whole
Yeah.
deal was to be against them, and I feel like that's gone by the wayside. A lot of people are really on board now with the idea that it's a collective storytelling game
Mm-hmm.
that you're playing, right? So for me, the games nowadays have changed, and my style and everything has had to change so drastically because of that idea. When you're 8 years old, everything is all about I'm going to beat you kind of a thing, right? It's very
Yeah.
competitive and whatnot. So
Yeah, that's what I mean, that's what you're born to do. Or when you start playing a game, or when you start old enough to start playing a game, you realize that it's a win-loss situation. And then that's how you have to, your mindset sort of is set that way. And then when you start playing Dungeons and Dragons, or some other RPG, it kind of goes against that. Well, not at first though. You're right, because back in the day, Gygax and his boy and Arneson, man, they were the ones. They were like, come at me, bro. That's how they wanted to play D&D, or that's how they wanted to run the system. And I think it kind of evolved since then. But man, I'm telling you right now, I mean, was that a fun way to play?
I think it was. It's like anything. I was part of the chess club when I was a kid and whatnot,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
I don't think like the idea of having a cooperative game wasn't really
Mhm.
something that I played a lot. Everything was us versus
Right.
them kind of a thing.
Oh yeah.
That's most games are built like that. There's not a lot of games up until I guess maybe recently. It's none that I played anyway that were cooperative, where you were playing with other
Mhm.
people and stuff like that. So, but for me, I found it fantastic. There was just something about it that just, looking back, I think it was amazing. But then looking back, I know a lot of shit sucked back in the 70s. We didn't have cell
Right.
phones, computers. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? You had to get up to go change the frickin' TV. That was ass.
Right. And here's the thing too, man, and this happened a lot of times with us, is um I lived in I guess kids are 11 years old, man, are playing, and they're not gonna. And some of them, man, are not gonna take care of their shit. And the kid who had the systems, or the kid who had the Marvel superhero system, like I said, he lost one die, and then one day he loses. His baby sister gets a hold of the book and tears off the chart that you need to roll on. I'm like, well, how are we supposed to play now? Oh no. And that's the thing too. There was just the peril of somebody not being able to take care of their shit.
Kids are
I'm
stupid.
like, well, yeah, I mean that's the thing that I mean, you hopefully you learn that lesson. Like, don't let your baby sister get in your stuff, and maybe take care of your shit and put it up, or let somebody else take care of it. But that's what would happen, you know.
Did after you played your Marvel superheroes, where did you go to from there? What was your next
Um,
go-to system?
so we played that, and then I think before I left Texas, I left Texas like I said in early '86. It was mainly just Marvel superheroes, and then when I got to Kentucky, um, in the neighborhood, some kids were playing Top Secret, which was a little spy game, made by the same guys at TSR. And it was one of these cases that some kid had in the neighborhood, and hey, do you want to come over here when it's when the weather's shitty and we'll play inside, and checked it out, and that was pretty fun for just us screwing around and just we're playing somebody's house, and we did that every once in a while. So that was kind of a cool thing, but it wasn't really organized, and we were just kind of like, oh, do you want to check it out? Yeah. And then we played it for a little bit, and like, oh, do you want to go outside and play something else? I'm like, yeah, let's go do that. So it wasn't really serious. But then when I got into high school, somebody was playing Star Wars D6, and we started playing that a little bit too. We played that. I just played that on and off, and I really liked that system. That was kind of fun. But looking back on it, though, I actually picked up a copy of her. I got the 30th anniversary edition that the Fantasy Flight folks put out, and I'm going back, and it's still a pretty decent little system. But you can see, man, there's some parts that can be broken as hell in that game, man.
Yeah.
You know, it'll just like it's just play it's mainly just a D6 system where you just roll as many D6s as a skill. Like, if you're really good at something, that's how many D6s you'll roll. But like when you start getting into Jedi powers, man, you know there's a point where you'll roll like 10 to 15 like D6 to attack, and I'm like, come on now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it'll
that's a
start getting
touch too much.
ridiculous.
I gotta confess that growing up, I went from basic to I think it was expert. Then first edition came out, which is like advanced. I played
Hmm.
first edition, second edition, third edition. I just started getting into third edition, and then they switched over to 3.5. And I was like, wait a second, you've only had third edition out for like 6 months, and you've already come out with a revised third. I'm like, I'm not spending more money on these books. So I played a lot of second edition. I played second edition straight up until I think I was almost 30, something like that. And then I started having kids and working full time. But we would get together and drink, and so that was another fun thing that I did when I was a kid. It wasn't really so much the game as it was just hanging out with my buddies, drinking and whatnot. But
Yeah.
looking back, and even if you look at or compare up to things like modern day stuff, like if you look at fifth edition stat blocks are still pretty freaking atrocious. The fifth edition monsters are still pretty fucking lame, to be honest. But you still got your goblins, you still got your gnolls, your trolls, your basilisks, your bugbears, your owl bears. Like, they're really, it's almost like every edition just sort of changes some stuff a little bit, and they just sort of resell you the previous edition stuff. Because if you look at fourth or fifth edition, Goodman Games, they came out with fifth edition Keep on the Borderlands, fifth edition Tomb of Horrors. It's like, you guys are just changing the edition. Now, granted, fifth edition's good. Out of all of the editions, I think that it's my favorite, and there's reasons for that. But it just seems like D&D just does like an edition regurgitation, and then just starts pumping out all of the sort of the same shit. There's fifth edition's done some pretty slick stuff. Like, if you've ever played Minds of Fandelver, that is a fucking top notch deal. Um,
Yeah, that's actually what brought me back into D&D. I think when I started getting back into playing again, and I picked that up. I picked up the essential system, and I was running that for the for the kids at the time.
you
My
know
sister's kids. I think yeah, at that time I think that's when I was still playing.
when
Yeah, when I was
uh,
still playing Stepdaddy. Yeah.
when we do the creature features and I go through all of the editions looking up, what this monster does, like let's look up elementals and compare them across editions, they don't change much. Just sort of the significant stat blocks changed. Like fourth edition, hit points kind of went through the roof. So something that might have had 50 hit points in second or third edition now has like 500 hit points, kind of a thing, because that's sort of like the big change is the whole hit points and stuff like that. But pretty much across the board, the stats have stayed the same. I wish 5th edition would have done something a little bit different with all the stat blocks and shit like that, but my biggest problem with playing D&D right now is everybody knows the monsters. Like, you can't throw a troll at somebody that's played D&D for any length of time and not have them know to kill it with fire, kind of a thing, right? So
Right. Yeah, and you can't. Same thing with beholders. Same thing with your your mind flayers. Everybody knows all the core staple monsters. You're right. Because at one point in time, somebody, even as a player, somebody's gotten a hold of that damn monster manual, and and now I can beat the GM.
right.
They've done that shit.
The monster manual should have been titled "How to Win."
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, here's the thing too, man, and I'm going to talk about this for a minute because I played D&D. I played 5e with a buddy of mine last year. Or I'm trying to think. Yeah, it ended earlier. Well, see. This is like, fucking 2020 has gone on for like 7 years at this point. So I have to remember back. Like,
Yeah.
when did it? Yeah,
Right.
it ended like December 2019, which feels like 12 years ago. And then I was running, and before the world went to shit. I was running Deadlands, Lost Colony. But see, they were so stuck. My buddy was running 5e, but like all he, and I don't mean to disparage him or whatever because he's a good guy, man, and just and whatnot. But just the way that he was playing, like all we needed was pretty much just all he knew was like wizard, rogue, fighter, and that's about that's about it. Like anything else. My wife was a druid. He didn't know what to do with the druid. Um, and something like that. So maybe it just had that very just basic mindset about about D&D. And even though we were doing 5e, but some people are just like that. They just can't wrap their head around anything else but that.
Yeah. Have you ever played any of the old school stuff? Have you played like first edition, second edition, any of that kind of stuff, or just fifth?
Just briefly, the main one the one that I played the most was 5e D&D straight up, but I did play a lot of Pathfinder and Starfighter, which to be real, it's a clone of 3.5, or it's 3.75 for all intents and purposes. So I'm familiar, with how that system works, and pretty well.
Yeah.
Outside, as far as the core D20 system works, outside of that cutesy little Pathfinder shit where they why they call it Mathfinder, and you got all the all the complicated stuff that, okay, just can I grapple the guy? Well, let me see what your CMD is, and his first is your C plus B, and what's your attack rating, a plus plus plus, and all this. And I'm like, what dice do I roll to hit the man or grapple him?
This just happened. So
Mhm.
so we're playing. I'm playing in a second edition campaign. No, we're playing in 3.5 right now, and I didn't play in the 3.5. Like I said, I played first and second and whatnot, but 3.5. And it's funny because when you come from games like Savage Worlds or even ICRPG for that matter, even fifth edition. Fifth edition is like super straightforward. Roll high.
Mhm.
That's all you really need to know.
Yeah.
When you're game mastering, I think what a lot of people really like about fifth edition is if you're unsure of a rule and you don't want to have to spend the time to look it up because maybe you know by now that you shouldn't bust out the rule book at the game table when you're telling the story. But that said, the cool part about D&D, for me anyways, when I started playing it, what really like attracted me to it, because I only ever played Dungeons and Dragons. I was an elitist snob. If it ain't D&D, it ain't for me. But the cool part is when you come to a spot that you're not quite sure of, if you don't know the rules or you don't know what's going on, all you got to do is just say, roll me a d20, because you
Yeah.
know that the higher you roll, the better it is. So that solves all problems. I don't know what
Mhm.
your stats are for saving throw or saving versus poison. Just roll me a d20, and if it's in the middle somewhere, then we can stop and look. But if you roll a 2 or a 1920, we don't have to look
Mhm.
the rule up because you know that it's going to be roll high and it's good. But you start going back to the old school books and shit like that. Holy man, try calculating THACO for the first time in 10 years.
Uh,
What a garbage system that was. You have negatives for your armor class and positives for your armor class. It's like, who thought of this stuff? Like, it's not good. which is so funny. Like, I'm honestly not well versed in OSR. Every time I see it, I'm just like, I'm done with old school stuff. I don't want to play it anymore. And ever since I found Savage Worlds, I want to say 5 years ago, that was an eye opener. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Savage Worlds is the be all end all or any of that kind of shit, but it's just one of these systems where things are kind of straightforward. And what
Right.
I mean by that is, you take the spell section. If you want to cast a magic missile, they have a spell called Bolt. That covers any magic missile, whether that missile is made of poo, wieners, anything,
Mm-hmm.
right? You just what they call trap it as whatever
Mm-hmm.
you want. This is the effect of the spell, and here you go. But you take a book like Dungeons and Dragons, or you take their spell system, and it's like they got spells for friggin' magic missile. They got spells for casting bolts of goo. They have a separate, and each one of them does just something a little different. And it's just like the
Mm-hmm.
monotony of it is completely unnecessary. And it's even
But
worse when you go back in time. These books just get worse.
the thing too, man, that kills me about playing D&D, and especially like this too. In fact, I know I've talked to people back when I was playing Starfinder, Pathfinder, before I started getting into Savage Worlds and other systems. And this was a few years ago. I mean, people would talk about like, "Hey, let's go." I love 3.5. Let's go back and do that. And somebody say, "Oh, you want to run 3.5?" I was like, I call Wizard, and people be like, "All right, we're not playing anymore." You know,
Peace out.
really? Yeah, seriously, man. Because I mean, the Wizard was so fucking broken in 3.5. Everybody, because the Wizard and Wizards today, man. And this is, I almost think that like, if you play as a Wizard in D&D, you just want to hit the I win button, man. Because the Wizard, you got your fucking spell book, and all you're doing is just thumbing through your shit, and like, you just want to spell for every occasion, and you don't want to have to work your way around anything, and just hit beep, I win. That's
Mm.
all. That's all a wizard is, and that's all it was in 3.5 too. And that's what I've learned. It's the same thing, in the same thing in Pathfinder.
Yeah.
They're just kind of broken anyway, man. Or just the whole kind of system, the whole magic system, and how everything's kind of laid out, and the spells are kind of broken, I think, anyway too.
I
You know,
feel I feel like the older the system, we are talking about nostalgia. The older the system, the more complicated they were. Over the course of
yeah,
years, we figured out ways to deal with situations that are just better. And so these old systems, although they have that, homeschool, like I loved hanging out in my buddy Balfour's basement and playing,
mhm,
we played Keeping the Borderlands for I don't know how long. And then
mhm,
when I would die all the time because, it was freaking deadly, like, you know what I
yeah,
mean? Roll up
right.
a new character. That was super fun. I remember having my binder full of character sheets that I probably had right up until my house flooded 10 years ago. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, there's just so many good friggin' times that you just remember. But the funny part is, like, I'm trying to think of a thing that's better back in the day than it is now. Because,
I'm trying to think so too. And, I'm
like,
really trying to rack my brains. In fact, I pulled up. I got three systems that I played here, and I pulled up the three rule books that I got. And one was Marvel superheroes, the other was Star Wars, like I talked about, and the main one that I played when I got into the army and everything, and I used to play with my shop sergeant and his wife, and a couple randos here and there, just people who drop in, drop out. Was Champions, especially because we like the supers and stuff. Even though they didn't read comic books, but they were just fascinated with superheroes, so it was fun to play with them because they had a different perspective on things. Um, and man, I'm pulling up these systems, and there is nothing here that made you just in these systems that's making me go like, oh, wow, you know, man, oh,
yeah,
I missed that. I'm
right?
sorry. I'm really not. I mean, I'm just like, okay, that's cool, but I'm like, oh, this would be better in this system. Like
Yeah.
I'm sitting here looking at the Star Wars. I'm sitting here looking at the Star Wars. I have the old. I have that PDF for the Star Wars enhanced edition, or whatever it is, the old D6 one from West End Games. And yeah, it's cool, but I'm thinking, man, this would run better. And then their system, like, yeah, I equate this to like running this in Age, where it would be easy to run this in Age, and it'd be easy to run this in Savage Worlds too. I just think it'd be in a better, a better system. And same thing with the supers too, man. Like Savage Worlds and I want to say they're just another generic game system. Kind of opened my eyes up to the way supers is because, man, these systems that were designed just for like specific like franchise heroes like DC heroes wasn't too bad, but the Marvel superheroes games, they were way too convoluted for their own damn good, man. We were like, I just want to be Spidey and swing down the bill, swing a web. Like, no, you got to roll on this chart, and you got to roll over here. You got to fucking stick your foot in your ear, and you got to, wrap around and sacrifice a goat and do all this, and then look at this damn chart to see if you did it. Can't I just roll a big number and say yes?
No, you cannot. You cannot. No. That's kind of the worst part about it. You look at old video games. Like, what was the game where you had to cross Oregon Trail? Do you remember that? Like, you'd get really invested in that, and all of a sudden you got syphilis, and that's it. Your shit's done, right? Like, how the hell did I get syphilis? Where did that come from?
Did you have a Nintendo system back when you were a kid?
Almost every one of them. I started off with a VIC-20. That was my first computer. I moved from a VIC-20 to a Commodore 64, at which point I had 2 shoeboxes of the old 5 1/4 floppies. I probably had well over 2,000 games for Commodore 64. I ran a BBS before the internet was a thing in my life. And my bulletin board system was called Maximum Density. It was based on what was called Image BBS, and my bulletin board system would connect to a guy in Seattle, and then his would connect to another one. We would pass packets around and shit like that. So it was kind of like a nationwide sort of bulletin board system. I went from that to an IBM 386, but all my buddies had Nintendos, Sony PlayStations, ColecoVision, Intellivision. I even had Pong on. Man, I wish I could remember what Pong was called. I'm so dating myself, man. Pong?
It was called Pong. It was on Pong on the Atari. But like what I was getting at too is like the Nintendo games, like the original NES that came out in 85, 86 or whenever it did. And they put the games out for them. They knew that the games, I think the games maybe cost like $25 at the time, which was not chump change back in the 80s. That was still a hefty, that was a hefty sum. But they didn't want kids beating the game so quickly that they'd have to go out and buy them again. So they made them fucking hard, they just almost like crippling hard. And so that was the whole pattern. They actually called it like Nintendo hard, like these games were, because they would just take forever, and they made them purposely hard because they wanted you to take forever to beat them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's too funny. Have you played much OSR?
No, man, I really haven't, because I guess the OSR stands for old school revival or old school revolution. But the thing is, I don't have that affinity for that stuff, man. Yeah. I didn't grow up playing it. Yeah. So why do I want to go back and play something that I didn't grow up playing? I mean, I've checked out DCC a little bit. I've just played it like once, but it really it really doesn't appeal to me, man. Yeah. I would rather as far as something like that goes, as far as like a D20 system goes, I think ICRPG does some things really, really cool, but I don't know if that's really an OSR system. Or do you think it might be to me, but I don't know. I don't know if it really is.
Well, I think it
emulates some OSR things to me, but then again, I don't know.
But then it doesn't. So if old school, a lot of the OSR guys are dicks. Wow. I forgot what I was going to say. See, I don't know if ICRPG is OSR because I've never played OSR. I mean, if OSR is D&D, isn't it old school Renaissance?
Yeah, old school Renaissance, old school revival, old school revolution. Like that, right? That's what I've heard. I don't know what it is. I think if you ask, hey, I'm an OSR, you won't get the same answer from these guys because nobody can define what it is.
Yeah, I think OSR is basically, it's like old school D&D. I'm just, man, don't quote me on this shit, but I believe that the premise is it's old school D&D with modern day fixes.
I think that's sort of the thing too, where they take those basic ass rules, and just apply them in different settings. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I guess if you want to do that, man, that's fine too. But you can also drive a car that didn't have fucking AC either, and you drive a car that didn't have speakers either. And it's like, all right, man, I'm gonna get this off my chest real quick too, man. It's like when people say, you can play Savage Worlds with core with trappings. You don't need anything else, core with trappings or whatever. Like, I equate that, that's the welfarist gamer I've ever heard. Somebody that says that, man, Yeah, you can do that too, and then you can also live in a house with with no bathroom either. You know,
Oh man, that's too
you
funny.
can live out in a cabin. You can live out there. You can have a house with just four walls and a roof.
It's
You
like,
can have that too.
what about, back in the day when pogo sticks were cool? Pogo sticks and hula hoops. You know what I mean?
Right.
Fuck that shit.
Yeah.
I'll take Pong before I take any of that crap again. Um,
Right. Yeah. We used to have a pogo stick, man. I used to get fucking hurt on it all the time. Get on. You'd hop on it twice and nice.
uh,
You know.
After I was 10, when I was 13, I was 6'4", 280 pounds. Pogo sticks they didn't make them for me, right? I just chased dogs off and beat the shit out of
Right.
them. But I think the other thing with OSR2 is it has that feel, that flavor where everything is black and white. Even the art is that old school chintzy stuff, right? Like, it just looks like shit. It was cool when I was a kid to see the idea that these
Yeah.
guys were making, like some of the artwork from way back in the day. That they would put in these modules and stuff. Even the inside cover of the old Keeping the Borderlands was just like a flat blue. Like, the maps even look shit. It was just blue and white, right? And
Yeah.
I didn't care. When I was a kid, I was like, that was the best we got. Do you remember? This is, I guess, a good point is when we first started off in computers and shit like that, we were 8-bit. Right?
Yeah.
And look at us now. Like, nothing. I can't think of anything back in the day that is good then as it is now. Like, shit just got better.
All right, man. So I have like all the game consoles. I don't really like playing games on the computer. I'll run a game, online on the computer. I don't really have, the only one that I have is my work laptop, man. I'm just not, I don't accumulate computers like a lot of people do. But like, I was thinking about playing a game on the PlayStation versus playing one now, and I'm like, man, come on. I'm sitting there, I'm playing the Avengers game, and it looks like, it's so photorealistic in a lot of senses, man. The graphics are just amazing. And I just imagine what 11-year-old me who was playing the Marvel superheroes game, was transported to 2020 and would play that game. I think his brain would probably just go and I'd stroke out right then and there, because couldn't fathom something like that.
Talk for a second, Jay. I'll be right back. You got 10 seconds. Go.
10 seconds. So yeah. So Gary is a piece. No, he's a lovely man. No, just sort of like what I don't get about a lot of like the old stuff. And like, yeah, you can go back and like, you can drive a vintage car and everything, and yeah, that's cool. But it's gonna take a lot of damn upkeep.
I got this. I got this for. I got to blow the dust off it.
I gotta switch over to Twitch.
I'll hold it way back here. ColecoVision flashback with the Coleco
Nice.
controllers. But man, there's some games on here that used to be just like so fun when I was a kid. There was Zaxxon, Jumpman Junior, right? Remember those games?
Zaxxon was arguably the best game for the ColecoVision because it actually had the little controller that was elevated, and the controller actually had like the little keypad on it too, like the Intellivision. It was actually a pretty slick little thing too, because Atari's were notorious for breaking. The joysticks or whatever were really, really sort of difficult to keep up with, man. And in fact, you'd be hard pressed now to see an Atari that was Atari controller back in the day. It was still intact. That somebody didn't tear the controller off and the dog didn't chew the white part.
I was trying to find, there was an old game that I used to play. I want to say that it was called Gateway or something like that. It was like one of the first role-playing games that they came out with, and you played this little 8-bit guy with a sword that went up and down, and then you would just walk around and you would kill like little spiders and rats and stuff like that, and you would find treasure chests and shit. But I would play the crap out of that game, man. I thought it was so awesome. And then, I fired this thing up to go play it. Oh, fuck, I didn't make it 2 minutes into it. I was like, what's this shit, man? I'll go play World of Warcraft.
That's sort of the same thing with me too. Like, I got all three consoles. I got the PlayStation, and Xbox, and I got a Switch. In fact, my wife has her own Switch. It was the original Switch that that I bought, and then I bought my own Switch recently just because she plays that one. I played that one, and I played this one. But like, you can play like the old Nintendo game, some old Nintendo games and old Super Nintendo games. And I'm like, I'm gonna go ahead and check it out. As soon as I do, I'm like, why, man? I'm gonna go back and play the game that I bought originally to play this, shit with.
It's crazy. So the guys at the gaming store fired up. Well, I've played first edition, second edition. The cool part was when I played first edition with him, because he's a modern day game master and he's good at the storytelling aspect of it. The story was great. Yeah, I played Rattle. See, Mr. Rattle? We played World of Warcraft together in Bothell, Washington, way back in the day. Me and Rattle went down and we used to be. Well, he's still part of this group Tick that my buddies are in and stuff like that. So we went down to Washington. They had a gaming store, like sort of like a Radio Shack, I guess, in Canada. We bought laptops and stuff like that, and then we gamed on them all weekend. And I think Rattle installed like. Well, I'm not. I shouldn't say that it was him, but one of the guys installed like a bunch of child porn, and then we just took the laptop back. But we were. This was fucking 30 years ago. We were like 20, so don't be mad. Don't be mad.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Then we just returned them all. Pawnee put them all on his visa. He had a company visa, so we bought like 3 or 4 laptops for $600-700, right? Racked up $2,000 worth of laptops. Played on them all weekend. Took them back. It was pretty cool. But that's 20 years ago. When I was a dumb kid. Good times. Where was I? So, Jay has all the talent of a modern day game master. He's got the skills, the abilities, that kind of a things. But he likes these old systems, and so it's funny because when we're playing these games, there are times when I don't want to say it's not his game mastering that makes me cringe. It's the idea of the rules. Like, you got to start looking back at some of these things and how far does that spell go? Have you? Do you? Well, you don't play D&D. Charm. Do you know that when you cast Charm in first edition, it is based on how smart you are. So if you're real dumb, you can be charmed for like a month.
You were telling me about that too when we had the discussion when we pull out the old the old because I think when you're talking about vampires and talking about them charming people on a creature feature, you mentioned that too, man. And if that ain't broken as hell, man, that's broke as shit. And what are you gonna do? You can't argue with it, I'm like, oh, okay, barbarian, you're a dumb guy, you got an intelligence of, and back then you could easily walk around with like low ass, attribute scores. And so you get charmed by a friggin' vampire, for a month. I'm like, you're pretty much out of the game. I'm like, well, thanks, man. I hope you're happy, dick.
Right? Oh man, it's so bad. The worst part is that like, so another big problem that I have with, I shouldn't say that. Another thing that I found out about 5th edition. Do you remember the whole Benny's is like saving throws deal?
Yeah, I do.
You hear it all the time, right? But this is the reality of the situation. In 5th edition, if you cast Charm on somebody, every round they get a spend a Benny. It's literally what happens. All spells are like that. The premise being that it's not fun for a player to sit at the table and not be able to do anything, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't want to charm them and wrap them up for 10 rounds while everybody else is having fun slaying shit. I get that premise. So, but the problem is that I think that maybe the difficulty needs to be changed so that it's harder to get out of that spell or something like that. But there is a definite problem because if I'm playing a wizard and I'm trying to charm somebody or I'm trying to hold somebody or do a thing to somebody where I want to wrap them up, I always found as a game master when I'm playing these games that they could get out no problem. Like it was never an issue. And that was the premise of the whole Benny versus saving throw debates where I'm like, D&D does it as well. In D&D, you have saving throws for everything. Like, it doesn't matter what happens. You poison, death, magic, you name it. Any spell that gets cast on you, you get every round, you get a chance to break that spell or break out of it. And I feel like that's a flaw with 5th edition. There should be just some things where you can wrap a player up and sort of be done with them. But I get the premise of it at the same time. So it seems to me that saving throws are like bennies. They're sort of like your re-rolls, was the premise that I was getting at. You're limited to 3 in Savage Worlds, but in Dungeons and Dragons, it's like every round you could spend a benny. Here's your saving. They're called saving throws.
Now, there's something that I've realized too. When I took a break from RPGing from '94 to 2009, just because got out the army and there wasn't really anybody. I just didn't really know anybody to game with, and just didn't think about it for a minute. And wasn't in a big social group or whatever at the time. Just didn't occur to me. But when my sister's kids got to be about 9 years old, they saw this game that I had over at my sister's, or actually at my mom's house. And then they were like, hey, Uncle Jay, can you teach us how to play? And I was like, holy shit, I never thought this day'd come. And I was like, all right. And so I went and I kind of went crazy and bought a bunch of stuff, and started teaching him how to play these RPGs. And we've been doing it ever since. But, man, like, here, the thing that gets me overall about all the stuff, and I've gone through like all these systems and everything. The one thing that I've noticed is like they've incorporated like these meta currencies, like I said, like bennies, story points and everything. They didn't really have those back then. I don't remember playing Champions or even Shadowrun where you had like these meta currencies to use to like bail to re-roll or to bail you out of stuff. Man, it was just like hard and fast. Like you screwed up a roll. Oh, too bad, so sad, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, the one that's sort of next on the list of things to talk about. Like, what do you look for? Well, you got one question here. What do you think the best version of D&D is? I've never played fourth. I really want to. Some
Mm-hmm.
people say that. Well, a lot of people say that it's a shit system, but then other people that have actually played it say you just don't understand the system. It's actually really good. So I'd like somebody to
Mm-hmm.
play fourth edition, but I'm not going to take the time to learn the rules. I've looked at the monsters and the monster manuals for creature feature, and I'm like, man, some of these things have like 500-600 hit points, and we're talking attrition based systems, like pound salt, buddy.
Yeah.
What do you think the best version of D&D is? For me, it has to be fifth edition. Everything is freaking simplified in that book. Like I said, if you're not quite sure of a rule, roll the D20. You know that high is better. That is a simple, straight across the board, easy way to play a game.
And the big thing I like about fifth edition too is they actually take that to a different they actually do something cool with that too, is the whole advantage disadvantage thing too.
Yeah.
And if there's a situation where if there's a situation where something favorable will happen, I'm like, ah, yeah, go ahead and roll advantage on that. Ah, man, you fucked up, you're gonna have to roll disadvantage on that. It's pretty genius how they just chalked it up to that too. So that's one thing I really kind of like about
It's
is the advantage. It's simple
yeah.
and it makes sense too.
Without a doubt, well, I shouldn't say that. In my opinion, anyway, I love fifth edition. I think it's fantastic. Um, do I love it enough to play it? Not anymore. And why not?
Yeah.
That leads us into our next question. What do you like about RPGs now? Well, I'll tell you what I like about RPGs now. I found Savage Worlds from Dungeons and Dragons, and there was just some stuff in Savage Worlds that was so much simpler and so much easier. Like
Oh
three
boy.
wounds, right? How do you not beat that? That makes the farmer. Are we getting some feedback? That makes the farmer with the pitchfork uh, makes him dangerous, right? Like unlike an attrition based system, that farmer walks up to your level 5 paladin, you know that pitchfork's doing at best D8, right? And you've got 50
Hmm.
hit points. He can't kill you with that.
Wow.
Like it's just the weirdest thing. I would actually, if a farmer walked up to somebody and that guy wanted to get all like technical and be like, "Yeah, have at it, farmer," I would be like, "He hits you in the throat, you suffocate and die."
Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
Um,
Called shot right in the
what
throat.
what do you like about RPGs now? I like the tricks. I like the gimmicks. I like those kinds of things. ICRPGs, threats, treats, and timers die, where every 4 rounds keeps me as a game master on my toes. I got to think of something to do to my players. Everybody roll decks. A volley of arrows comes in. The earth shakes. Dust. The dust from the fireball blows up in your face, and you could be
Mhm.
blind or something like that if you fail your Constitution check. Like there's just you got to think of these
Yeah.
things, which is cool. Savage Worlds, man. I like the bennies. I like the mechanic system. Acing dice is fantastic. Modern Age, man, we got cool stunts that you can do.
Mhm.
Like
Yep.
games nowadays, compared to old school D&D and these old just simplistic D20 based games, they just have some cool things.
Yeah. Man, well,
I
I was thinking of another game that we played back in the day, Shadowrun. I think it was Shadowrun Second Edition we played. Man, I wouldn't touch Shadowrun today with a 10-foot fucking pole, because all it is, man, is just it's like we weren't allowed to play. The people we play it with, they said, "All right, man, if you're gonna play Shadowrun, you guys got to be straight samurai, and that's about it." I'm like, well, I was wanting to be a wizard, and I'm like, no, man, it's just too complicated. Well, I was wanting to be a hacker. Some guy got, oh, you want to be a decker, huh? Well, then I guess you want to play a solo game with me for 2 hours then, because that's how long it takes to deck. I'm like, God, all right. I guess I'll just be a damn street samurai then.
I
And then
was
all it was looking through the goddamn gear porn. All it was, like the whole book, was about, the book was about, 2 inches thick, and a good like inch and a half of it was just gear.
yeah.
You know?
There's just certain things like ICRPG where you don't have to look up weapon damage.
Yeah.
Weapon damage is D6, and
Right.
weapons and tools. So if you have lockpicks, you're using a D6. But if you're just doing basic, you want to punch somebody in the head, it's a D4. That's
Yeah.
basic. You're using your hands is a D4. Tools, weapons, D6, magic, D8. I don't think they use the 10-sided. No, they don't. It's just
But
6,
like,
8, and then ultimate, which is a D12. So if you roll a 20, you use the ultimate. And the appealing part is all of the other stuff. This is what ICRPG made me realize, that all of the other stuff is nonsensical. It doesn't add to the mechanics. Don't add to the story in Dungeons and Dragons. In fact, if anything, they take away from the story because you're always sort of constantly looking stuff up. How many hit points does this thing have? Oh, how many hit points did you do? 12. I got to scratch it off on this thing over here. ICRPG does the same thing because there is an attrition kind of a deal. But what I like about it is the idea that it throws the rattle, they do. So you can look up the Murder Hobo Show on Podbean. We go back, I think, 3 years. Also, if you're interested in playing Savage Worlds, I also do the Wild Eye podcast from like episode 10 or something like that, which I've been doing for over 5 years with my buddy Eric Lamoureux and Harrison Hunt. But yeah, I've been podcasting now for a long time. There's hundreds of episodes. If you want to learn about Savage Worlds, the Wild Eye podcast.
yeah, that's how I found out
Yeah, if you
about
want to learn,
this guy.
if you want to learn about ICRPG or Savage Riffs for Savage Worlds, I did the Savage Rifter podcast. I've also done it's Wild Die because it uses. I'll spell it out. Wild Die. If you want to learn about ICRPG, which is what I'm talking about, me and Victor Diaz did a podcast called Threats, Treats, and Timers. It's all part of the Murder Hobo Show.podbean thing, right? It's all in the list. The Murder Hobo RPG show is 24 episodes into it. Before this, there's another 2 years of other content. Yeah, been busy. I've
Been doing this for a minute.
for a little while.
And I've been co-hosting for like over a solid year now, because that's when we decided to revamp the and go to the Murder Hobo Show. Yeah, for a year now.
You came in,
and I started back, and I would guest host back in the day too. When the other one, when I'd help you out with some Savage Rifter stuff.
Yeah, been around doing RPG talk shows for quite some time. ICRPG. What was I talking about? I can't remember what I was saying now. I got sidetracked.
It was something about like how ICRPG. We were just talking about like how the damage and everything is different, and how it sort of streamlines. And whereas you don't have to look up weapon damage and in these systems too. Just like with Savage Worlds, that a gun is going to be a pistol is going to be 2d6, rifles 2d8, sniper rifles 2d10.
So simplicity, I would say, is what I look for in a new system. And the big joke with me and my friends is that I tell everybody that I only read ICRPG to page 72. But you don't have to read past that, because by the time you hit page 72, you get the core concepts. You never have to pick that book up again. That's the best part about it. Like, here's how the core mechanics work. Here's how you play the game. Here's some interesting stuff to do. Make sure that when you're throwing stuff at your players, that you put interesting room design, so it's not everybody fighting in a box. And then after that, it's like, but yeah, simplicity or some kind of cool mechanic like stunts.
That's kind of what I'm looking for too, because simplicity is one thing, but that's what the OSR guys are doing. That's the ones that just playing on strength, dexterity, constitution, blah blah blah, D20. I don't want to play that game. We played that game over and over. Yeah, I mean, I guess the same thing too. These same people want to play Pinochle and stuff like that, and I'm not really interested in playing those damn games either, man. I'm just like, my time on this earth is limited, man. I want to check out some new and different shit while I'm here. I don't need to, live in the past constantly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's, like, don't get me wrong. I mean, I think it's good to have like some core systems that you really like sort of know and love that you can run like at a drop of a hat. Because I'm getting to where I can run Age pretty well without thinking about it, and I'm getting to where I can run Savage Worlds pretty well without thinking about it. There's some things I still got to look up, but I mean at the same time too. I mean this is an ever expanding and ever growing hobby. That's just like saying, that's like a guy who's been playing Fallout 3 for the past 12 years. I mean, there's other video games, dude. You don't have to play that same game, you know.
Right.
You
Oh
know.
man, simplicity and a universal system. Sign me up all day long.
Yeah.
Right,
That's
Savage.
that's the thing too, man. As long as it's not D20, and I'm sorry, as long as it's not D20 and all these other things too, because this is simple, blah blah blah. I played that, my dude. Let me see something else, man. You know,
Like, show
but
me something new. It's kind of
like,
like having sexy time with the women's, right?
yeah, right.
You're sure you can play D&D for 20 years, but there's always that other game that you're looking at. Do you remember that stupid meme where the guy's looking over his shoulder, right?
Yes,
Hey, you're with
right.
your hot girlfriend, but you're
Right.
looking at the other one that you want to play. Oh, look at that system.
Well,
That's probably a really
I mean,
shitty analogy.
that's
Makes me
why I
look
waited
like
till I was 39 to get married the first time, and then I was 46 the second time I got married. So you know,
oh man.
I it took me a while to figure some shit out. You
Yeah.
know,
I will tell you what, though, the last question on the books before we wrap this up is, do you like gaming better now or back then? And without a doubt, now. I have
yeah,
learned so many tricks, so much
hmm
stuff, so many ways to handle situations, so many what nots to do because I sucked. Like, every time I made a mistake, I learned not to do that, and I moved on, and I figured out another way to do it. I'm not saying I'm the greatest game master in the world, but I have a good grasp of what not to do because I've been game mastering. Well, I'm 49. I've been doing it for
yeah,
almost 40 years. Well, a
yeah,
little over 40. I'm actually 41. Come to think of it, sucker.
yeah.
And I only ever game mastered. I rarely played. Usually I ran the games when my friends would come over and they would all play. So like I'm well versed in I've made all the mistakes is really what it boils
Yeah.
down to.
And then, I took my turn in the box. Well, I always started as player. I was always, the player first, and I was always like the worst players possible when I was growing up, man. You know, rules lawyer, you know, rules lawyer, power gamer, lone wolf, just the worst archetypes of gamers as a kid. I was, man, and it just kind of grew. You just realize it, and then you realize it. Just argue with the DM, argue with everybody about stuff, man. Just didn't want to lose. I was the worst, but like, and moving past it. But then when I started getting behind the bot, you're getting behind the screen afterwards, man. I realized like that it changed a lot of my behavior, man, and it made me a better GM and it made me a better player. You know,
Yeah. This
and there's
this
more tools now.
this is gonna sound sort of lame, and like I'm blowing smoke up my own ass, but there's a lot of times when I watch guys that give advice on games where, and this is why I don't want this to be an advice show because there's just so much of that going around. But I
Yeah,
find that a lot of times these advice shows either, I think in some way for me, get it wrong or just don't give good advice. But then I think if I gave advice, I'd probably just be as shitty at it too. But I feel like I get nothing from gaming shows that give advice. I listen to a lot of them, but a lot of times it's like I already know how to deal with the problem and shit like that. So yeah. Anyways, I don't even know why I brought that up. I was just thinking about something,
just thinking.
right?
Just thinking out loud. No, it
Um,
happens, man. Or were you're just like reflecting on the situation, and stay. And you do consume a lot of podcasts too, so it's one of those things that you're like,
speaking of,
why should I be listening to this? I already know this shit.
speaking of, last week on the Wild Eye podcast, we had a lady come on, a young lady, Ellen, I believe is her name. I've started following her on Facebook, but she does the Birdhouse Mysteries podcast or something like that, which is
Hmm.
a Savage Worlds based podcast. And she came on, did the Wild Die Savage World stuff. I've been listening to that, and it's I don't. It took a bit of getting used to. Let's put it that way. But the story is fantastic. It's really cool. It's about a bunch of adventurers and stuff like that. There's some story that still hasn't been resolved yet, and it's kind of like how do I explain this? They go to the birdhouse. When they're at the birdhouse, that's where they get their jobs from these boards, and they go do adventures and stuff like that, right? But yeah, kudos, man. Which the reason I brought it up is because it's interesting. Here's the one thing that I want to say that I would suck at, and why I like to listen to a lot of podcasts. You should listen to female. If you're a dude game master, you should listen to lady GMs and lady players. Because
I agree 5,000 million%.
There is things that as men that we do, which is like, if we can't knock it down, blow it up, or shoot it to death, like we can't figure out how to solve a problem. And it's super interesting when you listen to women play, because they don't have that idealism. Like a lot of them are really just come at it. They come at it with these ideas that I would have never thought of, which is super fascinating for me. So yeah, I really enjoy that.
I agree too. There's some people over there on the Green Running server. I want to say there's some people that were running a podcast, and I was listening to that, and there was a female led one, and she was talking about her modern age game, man, and I was like, wow, they're doing all kinds of this stuff, and combat was barely even thought about, man. And I'm like, man, as dudes, we're going to go in there like, we're going to blow up shit, fuck something up, man, And they're like solving mysteries and like getting, resolving like these, unrequited love and like just these really deep, like emotional, like sort of like, involved storylines. And I'm like, man, we're just fucking killing orcs, man.
Hence the major difference between the lot of us. And we just want to smash.
It's fascinating. Actually, right? It really is, man. You're absolutely right.
Just want to smash stuff. That's all I want to do.
In fact, I'm going to go ahead. In fact, I need to check that. I'm going to put that in my podcast. In fact, it's with the Birdhouse Mysteries.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. The Birdhouse. Right, so I got my stupid ass phone right here. I'll bust it out and tell you exactly what it's called. We got to go to Pocket Catchers, and we got to go to podcasts, and then rate. It is called, yes, the Birdhouse Mysteries. And it's pretty damn good. It's a very interesting story.
Because I need something. I need some new podcasts to listen to, because like right now it's just I listen to, of course, Wild Die, and I listen to this just to see how dumb I sound. But yeah, I need some other stuff outside of just like a couple of wrestling, pro wrestling podcasts. That's what I listen to now, and that's just to get ideas for my game.
Yep. If you want to hear two old dudes say dumb things, you come to the right place.
Exactly.
All right, let's put a pin in this bitch. It's time to get out.
Let's do it.
Oh, fantastic. Outro bedliner. All right, that's it for this edition of the Murder Hobo RPG Show. We hope you enjoyed it. And now that we have changed networks, guess what, Jay?
We care.
We care. Yes.
We do care.
Mm-hmm. Maybe not much, but just a little bit, right?
A little bit. We care. We care just enough to let you know that we care.
Read the blue part, Jay.
Yep. So if you're interested in submitting 2 community questions so you could hear us poke fun at you and not otherwise answer your questions honestly, you can do so at murderhoboshow@gmail.com. Otherwise, send your hate mail to bleep.osr.
Oh man, those are my favorite. They really are.
You like it? Yeah, I try to pop you every time I do that.
You can also get us on Twitter at the Murder Hobo Show, on YouTube at the Murder Hobo Show, where I show you how to make 3-dimensional battle maps for role-playing and tabletop simulator, among other stuff. You can watch me do this live on Twitch at the Murder Hobo Show. You're already there, some of you. Or your best bet is to catch us on our social media platform of choice, over at MeWe at the Tabletop RPG Network. Oh, I guess I got to read the next section too, right? This is the part of the show where we're going to ask you to go check out some of the content creating fellow network members. Today, we'd like you to go take a look at FSH Schmo. Everybody just calls this guy Schmo. He plays Shadow of the Demon Lord. He plays Punk Apocalyptic. That's a little bit of a mouthful. D-Genesis and more. So if you're looking to get outside the D&D comfort zone, look no further than Schmo. He's here on Twitter. You can find him. I'll put a link in the show notes maybe somewhere.
Man, I always like hearing about dudes that are out there just like they're putting it out there. Man, I'm going to run some stuff you never heard of, dude. I'm going to run some Shadow of the Demon Lord. I want to run some Cyberpunk 2020. I'm going to run some. I want to run some Fluffy Kitten 93. You know, you don't know that game. That game's so underground, man. That that 3 people died playing it. You know, something like that.
From eating the fluffy kitten. That's part of
Exactly.
Nice. What else we got going on here?
Nah, so we so you can find the things that we discussed here in the show notes, organized by most recent at the top over at murderhoboshow.podbean.com.
That's where the podcast is at, Rattle, just so you know. Thanks for listening. Be sure to tune in next time. We're going to have another action-packed show where we're going to talk about things we know little to nothing about and sound professional doing it. Read that last line.
No problem. Have a great gaming week. We are out of here. Say goodbye, Gary.
Goodbye, Gary.
Goodbye, Gary. Goodbye.
Wow.
Goodbye.
I see how it is. All right, I'm going to see you Sunday-ish, I think, something like that. I'll see you before then.
Yeah, you'll holler at me whenever.
Cool. Peace out, sweet cheeks.
Adios, muffin.